Penn State star edge rusher Abdul Carter is one of the best overall, not just defensive, best overall prospects in the 2025 NFL Draft, and he compares a lot to Dallas Cowboys edge rusher Micah Parsons. We're going to talk about this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast. Cover your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parsons. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen to date and everyday. Shout out for being our everydayers. And you know I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Keep talking to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, man, and the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. Every listen is greatly appreciated here on Locked On NFL Draft. DP, today's show, man, we're going to talk about Abdul Carter, right? The guy that can do it all, the linebacker, the edge rusher. Where should he go in the draft? What team? How high? We're going to have that conversation. And then we're going to talk about offensive tackles, right? Is any offensive tackle in this class really worth a day one selection, round one? Should you really take one there? And then DeMarvin Overshown, the athletic Cowboys linebacker. How does his injury, right? I think torn a couple of ligaments, right? In the Monday night football game, how does that impact the linebacker class, right? A team's going to move around, jump up, jump down. Are they buying into the developmental part, knowing that what DeMarvin Overshown was able to do, right? Going from safety to linebacker and then playing good linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to have that conversation. DP, let's jump into this Abdul Carter conversation first.
Guys, listen, it is Crossover Thursday here at the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast Network, and it's presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Abdul Carter, Keith, a guy that coming into the season, you know, we knew what we were expecting. He played off-ball backer last year, showed all the flashes as a pass rusher, and then Penn State said, you know what, he's playing full-time edge this year. And while it started slow, just from a number standpoint, he's been so impressive this year. A pass rush win rate over 21%. On true drop back sets, it jumps up to 34.5%. He on the season so far right now, he'll be in the playoffs. So it's another guy that we're going to highlight and spotlight next week when we talk about the playoff games. He's got 11 sacks, 9 QB hits, 31 pressures. He's got a batted pass. He's been living in the backfield. Right on those true drop back sets, 8 of his 11 sacks come on those true drop back sets with the quarterback. There's no run game. It's just we're dropping back to pass. 6 of his 9 QB hits and 19 of his 31 pressures come on true drop back sets. Keith, when you look at the draft order and you say, okay, he's a top 10 pick. Like I don't think it's no discussion about that. Keith, like he's going top 10. I think it'd be foolish for him to fall out of the top 10. When you look at the teams inside the top 10, what is an ideal landing spot in your opinion for Abdul Carter?
The first one that jumps up, and I'm kind of New England, but I think the one that I like the most would be Carolina, right? A team that needs an edge rusher after losing Brian Burns. And then, honestly, they've taken chances at the edge rusher position, but it just hasn't made sense, right? Like it hasn't been guys with really top end edge rusher potential. So I look at Carolina DP as the first team that can do something and make something happen from that capacity. Then the next one would probably be Tennessee, right? A team that needs a stack linebacker, but also need an edge rusher. And I always say this about Abdul Carter. The comps are going to be for Abdul Carter. It's going to be Micah Parsons, right? It's just too much stuff. Obviously, the number 11, what you do at Penn State, right? Like the number 11, what that is at Penn State. But then also their ability to rush the passer. Then they both played hybrid linebacker. But I've said this, and I'm going to say this again, that I think that Abdul Carter is actually a more natural stack linebacker than even what Micah Parsons was too. Not saying that he's better, because there's certain things that I think Micah Parsons has an elite trait over Abdul Carter, right?
Yeah.
But I think that he's a better stack backer, so it could be an interesting conversation about how much or what are the splits going to be for him. But you read off the numbers, right? First time, full-time edge rusher, double-digit sacks in college football at a high level. So Abdul Carter, the first two teams that drop out for me would be the Carolina Panthers and then the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I think Carolina, like that's one of those ideal spots. And Carolina, shout out to them. Shout out to Bryce Young for playing better ball. Yeah, the record doesn't show it, but actually the record is good for him because now you're in the top 5. Your quarterback's playing good ball, and you could just go best player available rather than trying to replace him with Shador or Cam Ward. And I think they're going to be in a good tough spot, Keith, where it's going to be Mason Graham, Will Johnson, or Abdul Carter. And it's like, if those are the 3 guys you get a chance to argue in your draft room about, that's a good argument to have. Like you're getting a big time playmaker on the defensive side of the ball nonetheless. And, even when you look at Micah Parsons, I think he's dropped down to, I think he's listed at like 245 right now. But I believe he's played over 250 at times in his career since getting into the league as well. And I agree with you. I think Carolina is a great spot. It's going to be interesting for them, mainly because the defensive coordinator Evero be retained and brought back because he runs an odd front 3-4. I think if they're going to continue to run that odd front, that 3-4 base, I think Abdul Carter is a great fit for that because you put him in a more advantageous position outside stand-up edge rusher to play the run rather than 4-point stance, 4-man front at 250 pounds, and you're dealing with Tristan Wirfs. You know what I mean? And in the run game, and that guy gets to fire off. You get to fire out of a 4-point stance, and you can get your hands into his chest plate, but still, you're also in a disadvantage because he can, snatch trap you. It's just natural because you're already at lower leverage to him. He can just pin you down to the ground, essentially. And I'd rather him be able to be in a 2-point stance, be able to fire his hands off, whether it's against tackles or tight end. So I think that's a really good spot for him. I'm going to throw one out there, Keith. I think the Jets. Is a interesting spot because, again, quarterback, we talked about that on yesterday's show. Quarterback is a concern. We don't know what's going to happen in the Big Apple with Aaron Rodgers and everything. But Jermaine Johnson's coming off, I think, a torn ACL. Like, they need to consistently improve that defensive line group. And I think even with Jermaine Johnson coming back, I think he was going to be due a contract. I can't remember. I don't believe he got paid yet or anything like that. So, like, that can muddy some things up. So, for me, I think for them, like, let's just say Aaron Rodgers does decide to stay or they get a Jameis Winston or someone like that. You're in a good spot by being able to then bring an Abdul Carter in as that high first-round pick, and you feel good about what you know he's going to be able to do. Yeah, Jermaine Johnson has one more year. He has the 2025 season. I think they have, because of the first-round pick, they have the 5th-year option that I think they can. I don't know if they've exercised it yet. I don't believe they have. They can decide on that this offseason. So I think the Jets is an interesting spot for him because that is a position of need for him. But if I could put the best spot, Cleveland is a really good, interesting spot too.
You know what? 2 spots I like, DP, sitting here looking at 9 and 10. Chicago, right? They can use an edge rusher, help on the defense. And they have good stacked linebackers, but putting him at edge rusher, having him go opposite of Montez Sweat, right, could be a fun situation. And then my guys in New Orleans, right? They've been trying to figure out the edge rusher position for a very long time. Cam Jordan can only hold on so long, right? Like, I feel like he's trying to give them time to figure it out, and they just haven't figured it out right before he retires. But New Orleans could be a spot that they jump into and say, oh, you know what? This could be a good spot too. And DeMario Davis is out there. Good leadership right on the defensive side of the football. I think that could be a good situation. But DP, let's flip sides of the football, man. We talk about edge rushers, but you know the guys that's trying to block those guys, the offensive tackles, right? And we're going to talk about this offensive tackle class. And is there an offensive tackle with a worthy of a day 1 selection? Let's have that conversation coming up next.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch or an urge in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets. To get in on the action, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, you'll get started with $150 back in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. To get in on the action, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. So never waste a hunch and make every single moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And it's not just watching football games and basketball games or favorite sports teams live. Guys, it's concerts, it's comedy shows, you name it, they have it. Also, what I love, some of the things from Game Time that they have, the seat views. So before you purchase your ticket, you can see all the views from every seat in the venue so you know what vantage point you and your party will have. They have lowest price guarantees, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, use the redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. So download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Offensive tackles worth a day one selection, Keith. It's not many. It's not many. But I'm going to throw a name out here. We just talked about Abdul Carter from Penn State. This guy that blocked Abdul pretty well in the Big Ten championship game. Josh Connolly from Oregon. 6'4", 315. And when I was watching that game, I was watching the tape of that matchup. What was interesting watching it was just how quick Connolly's feet were, how quick his feet were, how active his feet were, how he was able to mirror and match Abdul, work the outside shade. He didn't allow Abdul to power through him. He didn't give him the inside track. That was one of the more impressive offensive tackle tapes in that I've seen all season, man. And I think, we've talked about Ariante Ursery and the tools he has and the power, the strength, he's probably one of the better run blocking offensive tackles in this entire class, right? He's got that I want to pin your face into the dirt type of attitude. I want to finish you type of attitude. I think from a pass pro standpoint, because I don't believe Josh Connolly is going to have the arm length concerns that Will Campbell's going to have. And when I just looked at his tape and looked at that game specifically against a guy that we believe is edge one right now, to go out there and for those who don't know, just by the stats, he gave up 0 pressures, 0 hurries, 0 QB hits, and 0 sacks. He pitched a shutout in that game. He pitched a shutout, man. I think he is a guy who that is one of those, like you said, we always talk about, Keith, resume games, signature games. They give you the paper for the contract, say, I'm a first-round pick. Do you have the signature to put down there? He put his signature, put that John Hancock at the bottom of that paper on Saturday night, Keith, saying, I am worthy of a first-round selection. Unfortunately, our guy, which would have been our OT1, Josh Simmons, had the knee injury, in the game versus Oregon, crazy enough, because if he was healthy, he would absolutely be OT1 for us and be in that discussion as well, man. I think Josh Connolly has a big case to be not just a first-round offensive tackle, but probably the first one off the board right now because he's healthy.
Yeah, DP, I like that. First of all, I like you mentioning that, right? Because I think that Josh Connolly is still not mentioned as offensive tackle, right? Like offensive tackle 1, it's still in the conversation. Yeah. People still going to go to the default names of probably Kelvin Banks and Will Campbell, right? And not saying that those guys aren't talented players, very talented players. It's just that Josh Connolly is not the automatic name pool, right? But you watch that performance against Abdul Carter, hell of a performance at the end of the day for Josh Connolly. And I had the opportunity to talk with him, DP, and I think that he's a guy that we would like, right? One of those guys that's kind of more focused on themselves than anything else, right? Like he's one of those guys that's kind of like, I'm about me, right? Like if I show up to the game and focus on me, then I'm gonna be okay. I'm not worrying about the other team. I'm not worrying about other situations. I'm focused on me. And I thought that was really cool because he has almost of what you will want in your offensive tackle, that type of focus, right? And almost kind of consistency, right? Like, you know how you said he had 0, 0, 0, 0. He had that type of consistency, right? Like, you're not gonna get me too high, too low on anything. I'm gonna show up to work each and every single day. So I like that name put. But I would say this, DP. I think Josh Simmons, even with the ACL, has a shot to go round one, regardless, because I think once you're that talented, he's going to be that much far out, right? Because he tore his ACL in October, early October, I believe.
Yeah,
so that was the Oregon Ohio State game. So I think that was like week 4 or 5. So you're talking about early to mid October. So I'm looking at that and I'm saying that, hey, you give that 6 months, 9 months, right? Teams are going to feel comfortable. They're going to have enough. The ACL injury is going to be way past the very beginning, right? Like all the swelling and stuff is going to be down. Like he's probably going to be at the point where he can jog in a straight line. And by the time he gets drafted, and teams are going to be comfortable with saying, hey, okay, cool. The medicals check, they check out, right? They check out, they clear. We feel good about this. And Josh Simmons, what we watched, DP, I thought that he was a very talented young man. And he was a guy that I believe started the year off the radar. And as soon as he was catching steam, we talked about him and things like that. He had the injury, but you give me Josh Simmons, I still take him round one. You let this guy fall to the Kansas City Chiefs at the back in the round one, right? There's certain teams that are talented that need left tackles. He can fall to those teams. They'll be willing to take it and say, hey, we go with the medicals.
You know, I love that because, again, like you said, I think the report said he'll be ready by training camp. So it's like he got hurt early enough to where he can get the surgery, let everything play out, and start let the healing process happen. And then now from here on forward, you can rehab and attack rehab aggressively and get ready. And I'm going to tell you, brought up the Chiefs, Keith, a team that I think should 100% be looking at them is the Baltimore Ravens. I think the Ravens should be, having an eye and understanding, just what's available there. Like how the Ravens do, they just draft good players, Keith. They sit and let the board fall to them. And when it does fall to them, they say, okay, let's assess and let's find the guy that fits what we want to do. And I think when you look at the fact that they have a void year next year on current left tackle Ronnie Stanley, he's 30 years old. Ever since he was battling nagging injuries over the past couple years, his game he's been solid. He hasn't been the franchise guy he was prior to the injury starting for him. So I think with that contract situation, you think about the simple fact of, all right, we're sitting there at, let's say, because right now the Tankathon has him at 24. So let's say they're drafting 24 to 28, somewhere there, depending on how the playoffs go. And Josh Simmons falls down the board. If I'm Baltimore Ravens, I'm running that card up there because now I can probably work out a 1-year deal with Ronnie Stanley, right? I can work out that 1-year deal. He'll be 31. Work out that 1-year deal. Let him be the starter, right? Let Josh Simmons get a full year of just being healthy. You know what I mean? And then when we go into the 2026 season, he's the new franchise left tackle. You got him. You got Roger Rosengarten. If Daniel Falele is working out at right guard, you got Tyler Linderbaum. The offensive line for Lamar Jackson could look young, athletic, and much improved because right now it's kind of up and down at times in terms of what pressure they allow and where they allow it from. But if you have two young bookend tackles, Keith, that allows center and guard to tandem block on Chris Jones in the AFC Championship game, on a Ed Oliver facing Buffalo, you know what I mean, on a Cameron Hayward or a Keanu Benton when you're playing the Steelers, stuff like that. It just allows you to be able to tag team and double team interior defensive linemen rather than having them just beat guys one-on-one and get to the face of your quarterback. Even though he is a monster that is Lamar Jackson, you still want to give him a pocket where he could just throw the ball effectively from the pocket where he don't have to do all of the heavy lifting with his legs. I think that is the Chiefs. If he falls to the Chiefs and we just let that happen, I'm just like, all right, guys. Like, I'm just looking at the NFL like, all right, so are y'all trying to defeat the Chiefs? Like, I don't want 2 back-to-back drafts. You let them get top-tier talents and Xavier Worthy and then Josh Simmons and you kick Kingsley Suamataia over to right tackle. And it's like, well, yeah, we're good on the offensive line. We're young. We're thriving, and we got Pat Mahomes. And it's like, all right, great. You know what I mean? Like, we're just letting that type of stuff happen, Keith. I think, you tell me, Kelvin Banks. Like, we didn't get to see him against Georgia because of I think it was an ankle
injury.
the injury and everything. He was out in street clothes. He tried to work out, but they said wasn't good enough to go. And I also feel like that was a little bit of hedging the bet. Like, we'd rather you take a whole week or two, get healthy, you know what I mean? And then we get you. We know we're not getting knocked out of the playoffs. So we rather you be healthy for that round one matchup. And I believe they have
Clemson.
Oh yeah, they're gonna need him. You know what I mean? Against Clemson, TJ Parker is dominating every offensive line he sees. You're gonna need Kelvin Banks. But when you look at Kelvin Banks' game in his season, Keith, do you think he is another guy? Could we get potentially 3 offensive tackles, even though Will Campbell? Do you Will Campbell's kind of O-line at this point? We don't know exactly what he's going to be.
Yeah, I think Kelvin Banks goes. And we talked about this draft class and like not the lack of top tier talent, but almost the lack of top tier talent, right? I think he still goes round 1. Talking about Kelvin Banks, I think he has enough good tape out there, right? When he performed at a consistently high level, that I think he still goes round 1, honestly, because I think the athletic movement skills are there, and I think people are gonna go back and forth between, hey, left tackle guard a little bit, left tackle guard. I think he's gonna be another measurable guy, similar to what Will Campbell's going to do, and I think Will Campbell's going to go round 1. What I think is DP with this class, I think we're going to see more scheme. These are more scheme specific guys than what we're used to talking about for offensive tackles, right? So I think that's going to be very important on where these guys actually go to have their success. And I think Will Campbell is going to be a clear example of that. You put him in a power run game type of team, he's going to be A-okay, right? But asking him to be the blind side protector, then you got a team that goes spread and he has to, protect 50 times a game, right? For one of these quarterbacks that scrambles, then maybe you have a couple concerns for him as an offensive tackle. But I think we wrapped it up with 4, right? We did Josh Connolly, Kelvin Banks, Will Campbell, and then our guy, Josh Simmons, right? So I think that's the 4. And if I had to predict at this moment, I think it's 4 offensive tackles. But DP, let's keep this thing going, man. We got Dallas Cowboys DeMarvin Overshown had an injury. How does that impact the linebacker class? We're going to have that conversation coming up next.
This show is sponsored by Built Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments, just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks and is completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. Redeem points for flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments. With over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program, the possibilities are endless. Okay, so start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. Guys, you don't want to miss out on this great deal. Make sure to use our link so they know we sent you. Don't wait, guys. Don't wait. You want to start earning your rewards today at joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. The Dallas Cowboys lost their young playmaking second-level defender and linebacker, DeMarvin Overshown. I think it was like a torn ACL, MCL, PCL. I think Jerry Jones basically said, the expectation is don't expect to see him in 2025. Yeah, that he might not. He's probably not going to be back fully healthy and able to play until 2026. So when I saw that report, that is unfortunate. And that was before we found out like exactly what ligaments it was. When I saw that quote, I saw that's bad. Like you as we say, hurt. Oh yeah, he was hurt. Like that is a legit injury. When you say, hey, he's not playing next year, we gotta wait another year after that for him to be fully cleared. And I think that just puts, as we continue to talk about, people aren't really watching the linebacker class as much. And I just advise people to do so. Keith, whether it's we talk about Abdul Carter and like him being that hybrid guy, you say the whole Micah Parsons thing. Then you look at Jalen Walker, same thing, 6'2", 245 out of Georgia. Guy that I feel like if you're a team, like if you're let's just say the Dallas Cowboys.
I was about to say the Dallas Cowboys should look at taking him, right? Like talking about
you got
Carter.
edge rushers.
Yeah, you got edge rushers. He can play stack linebacker and still walk down on third down. And I think honestly, it would make your defense that much versatile. Imagine, and we talked about Micah, right? Micah being a good a good stack. I would say average to above average stack linebacker, right? But just the presence that offers when you talk about what if how teams do these they mug the A gaps, right? What if you mug the A gap with Micah Parsons and Abdul Carter? What are we doing with that, right? And then on the same situation, you can walk these guys down to the line of scrimmage, right? And say, hey, go ahead and rush the quarterback. Don't worry about third down. Go rush him on second down, right? No, it could just be like you can do so many fun things with those guys, or you just send one and don't send the other, right? Like if you're talking about being a defensive coordinator, like, you know what? Sign me up for that, right? I want to be able to scheme those type of things up.
Also, with like Tank Lawrence playing edge, like you could kick him down to some 3-tech alongside like Mozzie. Then you can rush Jalen Walker off the edge. I know they have a couple edge rushers that were actually hurt this season as well. You know, our guy Marshawn Nealon got hurt and everything like that. And I forgot the young man out of Ole Miss they drafted about 2 drafts ago.
Sam Williams.
Sam Williams. Another physically gifted, powerful rusher. So they can mix and match and get really creative with their sets. And you think about Jalen Walker, he might be, I think the way just watching him and the motor he plays with, like you think about putting him in Dallas and you're facing the Eagles and that what's it called, a tush push with Jalen Hurts, right? That brotherly shove, that QB sneak. Jalen Walker has that like Troy Polamalu, I don't care type of attitude. You're going to see the ball snap, and you just see Jalen Walker flying across the line of scrimmage and tackling, Jalen Hurts, for a loss on 4th and 1 or at the goal line. You know what I mean, in the close game. But just teams that need stack backers, and I feel like this, kid. I don't know how you feel. You correct me if I'm wrong. If Jalen Walker is simply playing stack backer, I'm still drafting him round 1. I think he's that impact of a player to where you think about the Roquan Smiths. Not to say he's going that's where he's going to go if he's playing stack backer, but he reminds me a lot of that, where it's like the instincts, just the athleticism, the physicality, the nonstop motor. Like he has this crazed, intense play style to where it's like, man, I want that guy at my second level. I want my linebackers a little nuts, man. I need them to be a little crazy.
It's the Tasmanian devil, right? Like he just started in anything in my way, I'm just gonna wreck shop, right? Like if you're not on my team, I'm just gonna hit you, right? It don't matter if you don't on the offensive line, the quarterback, running back, wide receiver. I'm gonna just go ahead and hit you, and we'll figure out the rest after that. And I think that DP and because we've been doing this scouting thing a minute, right? That type of play style is not for everybody, meaning that you can't coach that into people, right? Like that's just how he wakes up every single morning. You think about, and this is not a comp, right? But you think about guys like James Harrison, and it's like, all right, this dude just a little different, right? Like, and kind of afraid for himself, right? And other people, but he just a little different, right? And so I think the same thing says for Jalen Walker, but they're also culture setters, right? Like you can't go in there and halfway stuff, and Jalen Walker is around there giving it all. You kind of start looking at yourself in the mirror like, I probably need to be a better person, right? Like this guy gives max effort all the time. Like he challenges you in that capacity. So I agree with that.
100%. I think he's one of those guys, like you said, culture setter. He's going to lead by example. He might do the rah-rah stuff too, but it's like you see him first one in, last one out type of stuff. He's watching film. He's telling you, hey, on third downs, he's calling out plays that he saw on tape that the offense likes to run on 3rd and 5, right? He's like, be prepared for this. Like, check getting his linebackers and his defensive line set. Like, those linebackers who know everything, to where they're watching the way their D-line is set up. It's like, hey, big fella, nope, you got to get over a little bit. Like, tap him on the hip, slide. Like, I'm good. I got this gap. You got that gap. He's that type of player to where, if you need him as an edge rusher, that's just a cherry on top. But I think as a linebacker prospect, he's legitimately one of the best. And then Jihad Campbell, man, like I love this young man over at Alabama, 6'3", 245, almost 250, athletic, can drop in coverage, can blitz the A gap. You can rush him off the edge because he looks like a stand-up edge rusher.
We never talked about this, DP. I'm missing a name too, and it's making me mad that I'm not thinking about who I initially thought of. But Jihad Campbell, you remember The Denver Broncos drafted for him. He was the linebacker out of Arkansas.
Drew Sanders.
Drew Sanders, and there's another hybrid linebacker that I was
Baron
thinking
Browning.
of. It was Baron. It was one other guy too, because I thought of three. Because I thought of you when I thought of Baron Browning, because I know you mentioned him a lot, right? But there's another one too that was kind of had a tall, upright situation. But he's one of those guys. Remember, we had the conversation on one of the staff calls, and I was like, DP, I mentioned you about Drew Sanders. I'm like, this guy played edge rusher in high school. And then he was like, that makes sense, right?
Yep.
And I see the same thing with Jihad, that I'm like looking at him, I'm like, solid linebacker, right? When I watch him second, like, as a stack linebacker, I'm like, early 3, late second stack linebacker. But when you watched his pass rush reps, especially the LSU game, I'm like, hold on, there's something there, right? And I think that he is a first round defensive prospect. And the edge rusher stuff, and I'm gonna come up with the comp eventually, or come up with it, but I think he can be on that trail to where it's like, we need to start thinking of this guy as a hybrid edge rusher, also not just a stacked linebacker, because I think there's a lot there.
No, and I think with that DeMarvin Overshown, I love that, Keith, because I think with that DeMarvin Overshown injury, I think it's going to help put some spotlight on, hey, this linebacker class is good, because we just talked about two guys, but we didn't get a chance to talk. We know Jeffrey Bassa at Oregon, 6'2", 235, athletic, former safety converted to linebacker. Barrett Carter, 6'1", 230, 240, athletic, can play man-to-man against some tight ends, drop off into zone, can blitz the A-gap, right? Deontay Lawson got hurt, but he's still a talented player. And a guy, I think, we talk about Kobe King. He had a pretty good game against Oregon on last Saturday, but Cody Lindenberg at Minnesota, like this, Landon Barton, Jay Higgins, Smile Mundon, coming back into the lineup for Georgia, he's looked good, man. This linebacker class is good. There's a lot of varying skill sets and athletic profiles and even sizes to where you say, okay, I want my guy to be more of a hybrid. Okay, we got Jihad, we got Jalen Walker for you, we got this guy for you. I just need a true stack backer that can do different things. Okay, we got Barrett Carter for you. We got this guy. Like, this linebacker class is good. Linebackers are undervalued, or I'm not even gonna say devalued. They're undervalued, right? And you don't know how much you need one until you don't have one. Ask Dallas, right? They've been trying to figure it out for a long time now. Like, you need those guys at the second level, Keith. So I think this class, I just advise everybody, man, go get your eyes on some of these linebackers. Watch the instincts, watch the athleticism, see what actually translates to the league, because these guys have the skill sets to do so.
Yep. Well, DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. Every listen is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parsons. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us, because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. On tomorrow's episode, guys, we have some early junior underclassmen prospect declarations, Deion Walker and a couple other guys that we're going to get into. Buy or sell, was this the right decision to declare, or should you have gone back to school? Talk about their game and all that and more on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.